All right, studio, which means we're going on air. Smooth 98.1. Here we are in the final hour of of Smooth Breakfast, which means that Lagos talks. And Lagos, we would love for you to talk on 014489 by sending your WhatsApp messages in to 0809 440 or taking it to Twitter and finding us at Smooth981FM using the hashtag Lagos Talks 981.
All right, and on the program today, we'll be looking at good governance and accountability. If you live in Nigeria, you know there's an NGO, a non-profit organization that is very, very keen on accountability and good governance. We have in the studio the Deputy Director at SERAP. Of course, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP focuses on specifically, economic and social rights issues in Nigeria. Kola Wole Oluwadare is our guest on the program. Good morning.
Good morning, people.
Thank you very much for joining in.
Mm. All right, so Kola, it's I'm looking forward to this conversation because when you think good governance and when you think accountability, you think how can we help Nigeria? So let's talk about it. People, we definitely want you and your thoughts in. But first of all, let's talk about government and the responsibilities of government, right? So, what would you say in your opinion? No, not even opinion. What would you say are the basic tenets of good government?
Um, there would be that in a democracy like Nigeria, being elected, it would mean that they have made promises, which will be by way of manifestos pre-election. And that is the basis upon which the people would hold them to account.
We do have
Knowing fully well,
manifestos pre-election.
yes, that those manifestos would conform to the laws that pre-exist. So naturally, you won't have people that have parties that have manifestos that will conflict with constitutional provisions, for instance. Which is why people, ideally in a democracy, would hold government to account based on the promises they've made within the context of the laws of the land. So in Nigeria, for instance, we have Chapter 2 of the Constitution that basically provides for what could make Nigeria utopia if it's really applied. We're talking of road security, and we're talking of education, affordable education at that. The Constitution provides that it should be free up to the first 3 years of secondary school. So you can imagine what that kind of utopia would look like. I call it utopia because
Let's
within the
face it.
Nigerian context, it looks more and more surreal, like it can't happen. But it is really what the Constitution contains. And also it means that government is transparent. Transparent means that every action of government, from budgeting to procurement, is known by the average citizen, whether they are learned or they are illiterate. And it means that government is receptible to criticism, which is part of accountability. And I know this is a democracy. This is not a monarchy, right? Even in monarchy systems that we had before colonization, the kings and queens or whatever they were ruling were accountable to people in some sort
At
of
the end
way.
of the day, then it's a relationship between the ruler
Yes.
and the ruled,
That's why
right?
it's a social contract. And this in within the Nigerian context, what we've seen is not because we don't have laws that prescribe for them. So we have the constitutional provisions, for instance, that says that the welfare and the security of the people shall be the primary function of government. That statement is itself portends a lot. So if we don't have security, then every other thing does not work. So when you talk of the welfare of the people, we talk about good roads, we talk about power, we talk about fuel that is not only affordable but available. It portends a lot of things, which unfortunately it's not presently in Nigeria.
I want to talk about democracy and the rule of law. Respect for the rule of law, I dare say. Now, I've seen in some of your suits, you challenge the federal government. How about the state governors as well? The state governments across Nigeria. We see some of these governors blatantly disrespect, the rule of law at their various states.
Now, before we get into that, what I just to bring it back to the basics, right? And now that as we've spoken about good government and what this utopia that we could have, I want to know because we see your SERAP always we see you in the news, we see you in the courts, but we where does your role in all of this come into place? I just delineated very clearly for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Shopper, for that. And I think this needs to be made very clear to the people. So, SERAP is what you would call a non-governmental organization. There are other names for it. Some people refer to it as civil society organization. Basically, we are just a group of Nigerians trying to do what is best. So, by law, we are registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission as a non-profit. It means we do not make money. So, what we do is, in this instance for SERAP, advance promote the human rights of Nigerians, particularly as the acronym SERAP stands, socioeconomic rights. Because our own research and experience, validated with experience, by the way, have shown that socioeconomic rights are the main drivers of every other thing within our constitutional provisions. And so that is what we do. We are not funded by government. That is why they name non-government organization. And we're not political, not religious, not partisan. That is what we do. And so our role includes this kind of conversation we're having. Our functions means to advocate, educate the people. And so I called it a two-pronged advocacy. Educate the people and then speak to the government based on our particular vantage point. And that includes some form of criticism as well, which every Nigerian, whether incorporated as a non-governmental organization or an individual, has the right to do. It's part of the freedom. It comes with the freedom of expression that is constitutionally guaranteed, and that is what part of what we do. And that brings us. And I'm sure you're going to ask. I'm sure you're going to. I can almost see it on your lips about litigation. So, litigation. If you've seen the way we work, litigation is I'll call it the last on the set of tools that we use at SERAP. So we
Okay,
do.
what are the previous ones before litigation?
So we do research. We publish from time to time research, which comes by way of survey, speaking with citizen groups. We do citizen engagement and education, which is part of what we're doing right now. And then we do what is called government advisory, which means we are telling government, advising government as citizens.
State or federal?
Both. Government is government. What we think government should do within the context of the laws, the legal framework that regulates government and citizens.
Question: what are the advances that you've made in terms of government advisory? Because people will say,
and that's why that's why it's advisory, Shopware. It means you're telling government is what you want. And let me give you an example.
Okay.
You have an elected representative at the National Assembly, for instance, both at the House of Representatives and Senate. It is your duty as a Nigerian to tell him that if this bill comes up, this is how talking of you now, want him to vote. Don't forget there's someone else in your constituency that thinks otherwise. So he's meant to aggregate the concerns of his constituency members and take what is in the interest of the simple majority. So when SERAP does advisory, it is SERAP saying this is what we think we propose the government should do.
Okay.
And then because we have legal frameworks that support our position, when the government does not do that, we go to court. Because the laws, which is the rule of law, says that when there are grievances between citizens, between governments, when I mean state government, federal government, and between government and citizens, Section 6 of the 1999 Constitution says clearly that the courts, being the judiciary, will be the final arbiter in that regard. And that itself is what stops self-help. And it is the failure of this trust in that system that's led to the self-help we've seen, which has led to so much insecurity in Nigeria.
Being in Lekki and what happened with
Yes.
the 100 narratives.
So
that we
SERAP
cannot
is only doing what a lawful Nigerian should do: submit your grievances to the court.
Now, what would you say to one of our listeners? Actually, was it yesterday or the day before? We took a story about SERAP, and they said the listener said SERAP goes to courts too much. What would you say?
I would say the person doesn't understand what public interest litigation means, and then specifically what SERAP does. What we do is called public interest litigation. It's an aspect of strategic litigation, which means the matters we go to court on are not even SERAP's issues, as it were. They are public. They are in the public interest, and so you can name any lawsuit we filed, and you'll see it's public interest.
So I was talking about. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask this
Go ahead.
question in from a listener, Jeff Oguma, who says, please ask scholar how many of the lawsuits filed against the government have been won. I'm eager to know.
Lots. So I'll start with some. In 2019, we had a judgment from the Federal Court Lagos, Honorable Justice Oguntoyibo, mandating the Attorney General of the Federation to take steps to challenge the legality of state pension laws and to seek a recovery of all the funds that have been found out to be unlawfully paid out. Now, a bit of context here. We had gone to court in 2018 to challenge what we've seen as what we call double emoluments. These are individuals that were formerly governors or deputy governors who ended up being ministers or public officers who are not only earning pay from their present offices but also what we consider as unlawful pension from their states, being former governors. Another deep dive will show that the average governor or deputy governor, for instance, by way of information, more than 22 states in Nigeria have pension laws for governors and deputy governors. It means these guys spend an average of 4 to 8 years in office as the governor and deputy governor. And they earn pension that is not only mind boggling, it simply boils down, it's just annoying that an average civil servant that spent 30 years of his life serving the state cannot earn. And then he or she ends up as a minister and continues to draw this pay. And these are public funds that could be better used for education, for health, particularly coming from government that is perpetually broke and perpetually borrowing. And so we went to court to challenge that, and the court agreed with us. We've had a judgment from the Federal Court Lagos too in 2018 where we got judgment compelling the government to provide information on how contracts in the power sector and in the water sector has been allocated and spent. So we have lots of judgment that we've gotten against the government from the courts, including ECOWAS courts in that regard. Most of which are yet to be implemented by the government. That again forms the basis of some of the advocacy that we'll continue to do.
I had asked a question earlier, and I want us to talk about it again so the listeners can get right information here. Many times when we read through the pages of our national dailies, we see SERAP taking the federal government to court over very pertinent issues. How about the state governors? I mean, even here in Lagos, I'm sure there are issues that you could decide you want to take the Lagos state government to court for, or the Rivers state government over similar issues that you take the federal government to court.
We're in court. I can give you 3 suits we're in court against all the states of Nigeria.
All the what?
All the states.
Oh.
All the states, yeah. So we have a suit pending in court presently where we sued all the governors in Nigeria and their deputy governors, basically asking them to provide details of their asset declaration forms. We're interested, Nigerians are
How
interested
far
in
do some
knowing
of
that.
these suits go?
That is, and you would understand that we have 36 respondents, so you can understand you can understand the procedures. But again, that is slowed down basically by the logistics of the judiciary. And then we have also a lawsuit against the president and vice president, all the governors and deputy governors, to a freedom of information request on the amount they have put out as part of the UBEC, how much they've paid out, how much they've assessed rather from the funding that is at UBEC for their individual states.
The Cross River State Governor, Professor Ben Ayade, who wants to be president of Nigeria, had illegally detained a journalist a while ago. I don't know if SERAP followed that story, and did you play an active role in that?
It's one of the many that we've done. We've gone to court for Mr. Agba Jalingo, for instance. It was public interest. It was in incarceration when we filed that suit, and we got judgment in his favor just last year at the ECOWAS court, and he was awarded 30 million naira for his unlawful detention, and that's just one of the wins we've had.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have more conversations here with Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director at SERAP. Remember, you too can be part of the show by calling in. You can call in to ask your questions or be part of the conversation. Feel free to react to the conversation we're having live in the studio. The number to call is 01-448-9981.
Keep listening to Smooth 98.1.
Nowadays, I keep saying,
so
oh, a whole lot because everyone.
All right,
was
so we'll now bring it
surprising
into
me.
the
My
issues
hobby
now that we've
competitions are
established
prepare
our
the kids for school before I wake.
baseline.
Even when my daughter makes me a cup of tea with 3 crowns milk.
Mom, we've got you now and always with the low cholesterol goodness your heart needs to keep the family going. 3 crowns milk, healthy moms.
Oh, you
happy
can
families.
also send your messages in via YouTube. So send your messages on the live stream. Yes, I forgot for a
There
second.
are other human rights violations, at the state level. I know that many people can't, people are doing so much already. I know that.
You see, let me tell you the funny thing. Every time we go on, and I'm going on one next week again, meet with government officials, the same thing. SERAP should do this. And I'm like, guy,
Yeah,
you collected millions of naira.
yeah.
Why are you asking SERAP to do your work?
I know that there's so much that Sarah.
Yeah, we
But I mean,
can't
Nigerians
do
look up to you guys. You guys are like the only viable human rights.
I would say no. But
What
again, I
other
understand.
CSOs do this?
Lot, budget,
No,
enough
budget
is
is strictly
enough.
about finance now.
Okay,
If-
okay,
yeah,
okay,
I'm
okay. You're
talking
talking
about
of public
human
interest
rights, and
litigation.
yeah, aside
It's because of
people
the
follow the
popularity.
money too, but the human rights angles that people also take.
But yeah,
on.
That
actually,
itself
we
is
should
an
talk about
indication
that.
of the failure of the system. That people now look up to civil society organizations to do what ombudsmen like the National Human Rights Commission or even the opposition should do. Really.
Yeah, the opposition, but they're not doing that, and then civil societies are now acting.
So people want us to hold that we are not the opposition, really. Oh. Really.
But
We're neither the umbrella nor the what's the APC logo, sir?
broom.
Oh,
So because of how almost all the time it's in the news, and I don't want to say I love it because we're on YouTube, but almost every now and again, people make Nigerians know that you can sue government for these things. For instance,
All right, we're back.
refineries.
Studio. It is 17 minutes gone past 9 o'clock in Lagos. You are talking on Smooth Breakfast with the calls coming in on 0144899981. We're going to go straight into a call. Could you please turn your radio off only for the duration of the call? We've taken you off, putting you back on now. What is your name and your location?
Good morning. Thank you for calling. What's your name?
Ibukun, yes, you did. Go ahead. Share your thoughts, share your questions.
All right. The second question.
All right. Thank you, Ibukun. Great questions. Over to you, Kola.
okay. So as part of the advocacy that we do, which is what we're doing presently, by the way, we continue to advocate at government to enforce the judgments we've had, not because they're in the interest of SERAP, or because they're in the interest of the public. But again, that shouldn't be surprising to any Nigerian. This is a government that we've seen that has absolute disregard for the rule of law. And so, but we continue. You would understand our limitations. We cannot get a judgment from the High Court, for instance, and now sue again to have it enforced as it were. But there are steps we are taking as part of judgment enforcement procedures to ensure that those judgments are enforced.
We'll come back to more. Let's talk to this call.
And I believe that Nigerians can do more in
Just
this
a moment,
regard.
caller. We'll come back. Hello. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you very much. What's your name and location? Saji, go ahead.
Okay? And what I thought they were for the civil service people. But now, I have seen that their organization is divergent. And what I'm saying is, so far with this government, this present government of Major General Buhari, what have they really done concerning the aspect of nepotism? And aside from that, how come this man has not been, since the National Assembly refused to do the needful? And that is somebody, even the opposition, to bring up an aspect of a motion for impeachment. Nothing of such has been done. All the promises made during his election has never been fulfilled. Tampered with the constitution, nothing has ever been done. And look at the rate of insecurity in the nation and the aspect of corruption that he has already spoken concerning, and yet nothing is done. What is SERAP doing about this? Is it only concerning the government also, or this is part of governance?
All right then, Soji. Thank you so much for your questions. So, Kola, you've heard the questions from our two callers, Ibuku and Soji. So, concerning Soji's question, your response?
We cannot possibly do everything because we are constrained with resources. And like I've mentioned, we're a civil society organization. We're just Nigerian citizens coming together to continue with this advocacy to hold government to accounts in respect of human rights for the people.
So you in the civil service,
society.
society
I thought we wanted to say civil
organizations.
service.
No,
Okay.
you know how it is. Freudian slip. Civil society organizations. Do you sometimes feel like what you're doing is a Herculean task, pushing or Sisyphean task, pushing the boulder up the hill with no help? What do you think that we, or what is it that civil society organizations need from the general public, from the citizens of the country?
Thank you very much, Shokwe. It's like a Christmas gift that came too early asking me this, really. Really, because I was about to say that the other time. What we need is really the support of the people. Knowing fully well what we do is in the public interest. What we need is the support of the people.
In
So
what way?
it gets Herculean not because of the what we do, but because of the responses of the people. So and I can understand to a certain extent that the lethargy, the angst of the people about what they've seen in the government. So that's the cynical, the skeptical. But they need to understand that it is a long-term thing they can't afford to give up. So their role is basically to continue with the advocacy. This discussion we're having, this conversation, it's part of advocacy. They need to understand and take it forward. So SERAP had gotten judgment by way of information. Now you know as a citizen. So what are you going to do to step up the advocacy to get that much needed critical mass to ensure that it's obeyed? SERAP has done its part and we continue to do our part. People need to talk about it, write letters, write petitions, everything you can do within your lawful means to push it back at government, to hold government
I
accountable.
want to take on one of the questions Ibokun did ask with regards to the Lagos state consumption tax issue, and then he gave an example of hotels. What's the update on that?
No, SERAP wasn't involved in that lawsuit. We didn't go to court on that. In fact, we've not done any advocacy on that at all. And like I've said, not because it's not important, not because it doesn't have a human right angle, but because we just have to strategically choose what we can do per time. And presently, I can tell you, people, we have more than 42 lawsuits in court. So you can understand the complexities that takes up. Yeah. More
Okay.
than 42. Lagos and
Let's talk about corruption, since we're having this conversation now, and some of the lawsuits that you have instituted. You instituted one against President Buhari and the AGF with regards the pardons for ex-governors Dariye and Iyame. You called it illegal. Let's talk about that particular lawsuit.
Yes, we're taking that step because not because the constitutional provision section 175 of the constitution does not permit the president to act, but because there are other constitutional provisions that the president should look at in carrying out those powers,
Right.
which we think is unlawful within the context of those two individuals. And the law is very clear. Section 15 of the Constitution says that the government shall abolish all forms of corruption. And when you look at the former governors that were pardoned, how can you say that action of the government, of the president, will in any way abolish corruption? It is going to encourage corruption, and that is the interpretation we've submitted to the courts for the court to determine whether the president can exercise his powers, prerogative of mercy under Section 175 of the Constitution at large, or there are other things he needs to look at, including provisions of the Constitution and public interest in exercising those powers. And we've submitted that to the court, and we are very hopeful that the court will agree with us in this instance, knowing fully well that the court itself, the judiciary, is part of the public. Whether individuals can be public officers, siphon a whole lot of money, get away with it, including some of those properties that have been forfeited to the federal government, and then be given a pat on the back and told to go, and not even to sin no more. By the way, it's not a go and
As
sin no
part
more.
of this suit, are you saying they should send them back to Kuje prison in Abuja?
The logistics of getting them out or in, it's not the issue. It is the exercise of that presidential pardon under Section 175 of the Constitution that we're asking the court to interpret for these two individuals, whether that action can be said to be in the public interest, and according to the oath of office that the president took in the seventh schedule of the Constitution, to act in the best interest of Nigerians, whether that action can be, and that's why we're asking the court to interpret. Naturally, if the court agrees with us, then that pardon for those two individuals will be rescinded, and then we go back to status quo.
Very quickly, in the few minutes we have before we need to take a break, let's talk about something that you raised. I wanted to ask, right, about the general apathy that you noticed when it comes to Nigerians and getting what it is that we deserve according to the law. What would you say is where, and now I'm asking for your opinion, would you say this stems from, and how would you say we can go about starting to even make any sort of um, steps in the right direction?
Yeah, the course is not that far-fetched. I don't know whether you understand Yoruba that well. I've mentioned it as a Yoruba proverb that addresses that. Can I?
Go for
It
it.
says that amukun eru ewo, okelenwo ewo sale. So when you see a knock-knit person and then the load is skewed, you don't look at the load. There is something carrying the weight, which is the feet. And so that is what you need to understand. We did not get here by chance. We got here, and I'm talking of the apathy that the people feel because of the sequence of events that played out pre-colonialization, post-colonialization, the military era, and then the democracy from 1999 till
So,
date.
Kola, what you're saying, pre-colonization, post-colonization, peri-colonization as well, and then all the history since then. How do we go about making a change?
We cannot, that is why you need a diagnosis before you administer the cure.
Okay.
So people need to understand what governance is, what democracy as a form of government is, and what their roles are, which is why you find that individuals that belong to a certain ethnicity or religion or some section of the country or political parties may not find fault in what one member, one person from their fold is doing, because they do not understand what government is, and that government is about the people. It does not mean that when it's your turn, when it's someone you know, you like, or from your party or tribe, that wrongdoing is abolished. So we need to understand the role we play. And let me explain this shortly. For instance, elections are coming around the corner. There are a lot of pre-election advocacy now. So we need to understand that governance, holding government to account, continues after the election. So no matter how you voted during the elections, government needs to be held to account. So whether one political party won or lost, every Nigerian, because we are citizens, first and foremost, needs to hold government to account for the promises they made within the context of the laws, which is why we need to understand it is an interest of everybody, and it cuts across.
Now, my question would be, can you understand what you haven't seen? Because I would posit that we haven't had a real democracy in the country, or is that a is that a?
Are you saying we're not in a democracy?
Well, I would say we're in a version of a democracy that is not working as a democracy is supposed to do. But then again, going around the world, where do we see true democracy?
Yeah, so no system of governance is without its challenges or hiccups. Some cuts across, some are cross-cutting, and some apply some bit of local context. So which is why when you look at our context, where we're coming from, post-colonization, how we've gotten here, 1999, how we've gotten here, there are things that we need to fix and we need to change. There are attitudes we need to fix. We have laws that are not perfect, and laws are not meant to be perfect. But what is the attitude, the political will of those in government to apply the laws? And what is the disposition of the people to government when those individuals are from their tribe, religion, or party? So you see that we get divided along these lines, but we do not understand that. For instance, when we talk about advocacy on spending for health, when COVID-19 came, it did not recognize class, tribe, religion. It cuts it. Everybody felt.
Yes.
Some people are still feeling it, by the way.
All right.
So when people understand that, I think their approach to governance and engaging government constructively will change.
Well, due for a break. When we'll come back, we'd like to look at the judicial system and accountability. Remember, you listening can be part of the show by calling 01-448-9981. Sending your questions to WhatsApp on 0809 444
Love life.
Sorry, turn
Just
this up
I
so
took
that
a
you
key
guys.
from you. No, it wasn't too loud enough. But when I saw you take it up, I was like, no.
Yeah. It was loud, so we took it off. I want to talk about the judicial system in Nigeria. Quite slow. This administration has 1 year in office and too many litigations already. When they are out, some of the cases were specific. President Buhari, for instance.
No, he's not his person. He's sued in his capacity as president.
So if he leaves office,
Yeah, it continues.
the case continues.
Yeah, it's
But
not
he's no
against his
longer
person.
president.
Yeah, it's not against his person. It's against the office. Which is why again, there's a point I really need to make. We have nothing against what it's the office.
When we come back, because I want to ask you again, most of the suits
Against Buhari.
it looks like it's instituted against the president, which is President Muhammadu Buhari.
Because when you look at Nigeria's constitution and our version of the software said, it's top heavy.
And that's
Which is
my
why you see
problem.
when you see
So
governors
you know
and
that
local
even when
government
they
chairman,
leave office and you still take this case on, Buhari himself will tell you, "I'm no longer
No,
president."
it's
You
not
sued the
against.
office.
It's not.
It's
That-
not
that's what I'm,
against the
that's what I'm
person, though.
It's
saying.
against the office.
If the president leaves office today, he will breathe a sigh of relief, like, finally, SERAP. I'm not going to be getting some of their lecture. I'm not even sure that.
I wonder what he thinks when he sees Sarah. This is just like,
It's the AGF. It's the AGF who handles most of this mainly,
People
not
need to
even the
understand
president
this is
himself.
public, and that is why you see some of those public officials also come to ask for some of these things when they. So you see people who have been picked up now who now understand they have right to fair hearing. And
Yeah,
like,
have you ever met before Malami just anywhere and then he looks at you and says, "Kola"?
no, but we meet
All right.
lawyers from government in court.
we're coming back in. Do you want to bring us in?
Okay. It's Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. And we did say earlier that you can be part of the show simply by calling 0144899181. We have in the studio the Deputy Director of SERAP, SERAP being the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project. We also advise that you send in messages on WhatsApp 0809444091. Edgar from Ikorodu says, I had a transactional stall with a bank from a point of sale since the 1st of April and gave up and approached them almost with at all fronts until now. Nothing has been done. Please, how do I go about litigation of that sort?
Get a lawyer.
Right? Get a lawyer.
I'm sure the
or-
NBA agrees with me. The NBA is nodding wherever they are now. Private
I'm
lawyers.
pretty sure that's what you got to do.
And then I think consumer protection too can come in on this. Just send them a tweet and then they would advise you on
So,
how to go about
Pepper, you're a
that.
lawyer now. And I
Well,
call you Barrister Pepper.
no, get a lawyer. Like Kolawole said. But Kolawole, let's look at this issue of litigations and our judicial system in Nigeria. If you live in Nigeria, you know it's a little slow. And to be fair to the judiciary, there are a lot of cases instituted on a daily basis. There are a lot of Nigerians awaiting trial in some of our prisons. But then there are a lot of misdemeanors going on in the country, and we see many times that SERAP sues the president, office of the president, and by extension the person occupying that position, President Muhammadu Buhari. I want to think he has 1 year in office. By this time next year or in June next year, he would heave a sigh of relief that we're no more getting letters from SERAP with regards, some of these cases that you guys institute in court. Now, judicial system, a little slow with the process. Like I said, the president will be out of office in 1 year. Will we see some of these cases in court still continue even while he's out of office, bearing the fact that some of these cases had his name as president while they were instituted?
Let's also
Thank
say
you.
that some cases are not slow to be to go through the courts of law. It's not
He
all
knows
that
what I'm
slow.
talking
Yeah, so
about.
that means it's not the cases that get fast tracked. There's a common denominator: political cases. Again, that shows we are yet to understand the essence of public interest and good governance. To speak to what Pepper said briefly, the cases we instituted against the president, not all our cases, some of the cases against the president is in his official capacity. So we are suing the office and not him as a person, which is why when he leaves, whoever gets there continues, because the action that we're asking him to do to carry out in public interest can be carried out by whoever occupies that office at that point. So it's not impersonal, so to speak. So the cases can continue. And as to the slow pace of litigation in the courts, it's something we've had to grapple with, given that we do a lot of public interest litigation. But SERAP's cases in the case file, in the docket of the court, probably constitute less than 1 or 2% of the court. So we have average Nigerians who look up to the courts too. We have people squabbling over 200 right of 200,000 naira who spent 3-4 years in court. Inflation has even made nonsense of that amount in that time. So again, it's just one of the problems we have, the effect of bad governance over the years that has robbed the judiciary of effectively playing their role, which is why, again, with this one of the suits we filed in court to compel the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission to review upwards the salaries of judicial officers. Their salary was first reviewed in 2007. As you would understand, these are people that worked 30 years to serve the state. And we have people in the National Assembly earning pay that could not even be denominated sometimes in naira. That's why you see sometimes when you hear about corruption cases, people break it down into dollars. Maybe it's easier on the mouth to spell. So we just have to grapple with it while we continue advocacy to make sure that not only judicial system works, power, fuel, everything else should work.
Okay. Recently, you sued Mr. President for spending 1.48 trillion naira on maintaining refineries with no crude oil. Now, part of that case suit, you said he spent 1.4 trillion naira on maintaining 4 refineries between 2015 and 2020, and you're saying that the allegations that it may have been stolen, mismanaged, or diverted into private accounts. In fact, the government reportedly spent 10.23 billion naira in June 2020 on 3 refineries that processed zero crude, and in 2021 the government approved $1.5 billion, about 600 billion naira, to repair the Port Harcourt refinery alone. Now, despite the huge spending, the refineries are still not working, and we feel scarcity is persisting.
Are they working? The refineries? No, that's the question. Are they working?
I think that
They're
might
not
be called
working.
a rhetorical
I know,
question.
that's what I'm saying. So the basis of that court action was actually to compel the president to order an investigation into the funds.
Did he get a response?
No, when I say lawsuit, every lawsuit is preceded by a letter
Yes.
delivered to the president.
Yes.
And then after a month, 3 weeks of no action, no response, then we go to court like law-abiding citizens.
That's what I was asking.
That is why
Did
we
you get
go
a
to court.
response?
We did not get, and that's why we're in court. So you would see that we're only asking the president to do what by law he should do.
But when you take them to court, do they send a lawyer?
Yes, lawyers come to court from the Ministry of Justice, from those departments to defend the lawsuits.
Okay, now, Kola, for me, it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because when we look at the arms of government, we're seeing our legislative, executive, judicial, and you are taking it to court and saying, okay, these are the judgments that we've gotten, but we've already talked about respect for the rule of law. So why continue if we're not seeing what happens after the judgments are made?
Would you rather prefer that I do some unlawful
I'm
stuff
just
to exhibit
asking.
my
I'm
ignorance?
asking.
Yeah, really, I understand. I actually thought that was rhetorical. Really, because
not.
it can be pretty frustrating. Shokwe, that's the truth. It's frustrating not because I'm a lawyer and understand how the law should work, but also as a human being and a citizen, I understand that it's not a utopia to have a society that functions, that people respect the law, that lawbreakers get punished, and that you can understand some levels of normalcy or predictability in governance. But we just have to continue because we understand that anything else will be unlawful, which will not contribute to, which will only make the insecurity situation that we've seen worse, which is why we persist in court, which reminds me of a judgment that I left out the other time. We got a judgment from Honorable Justice Obiozo in 2019, mandating the government to publish the names of contractors that have collected over 16 trillion naira in the power sector and have done nothing between 1999 till 2018 when we went to court. So when you understand that amount of money, and these are things in the public domain that government has spent this amount with nothing to show. And so we went to court to say, can government publish the names of these companies? The government has those names. Can they publish them and take steps to prosecute them, including recovering those monies that could be put to better use? Nothing. And then we end up in court, and we have judgment from the court. So judiciary has played its part in that regard, but again, the executive refuses to obey those judgments. But to answer your question, Shokwe, the short answer is we persist because we are Nigerians, and we believe in the judicial process in spite of the odds and the seeming indifference of government.
Okay. Now, um, and this is a little bit of a personal one, I suppose. Are there any cases or any types of cases that, any types of causes really that you're championing, right? That really get to you. For example, the one that we'd seen, we saw this one about the ECOWAS court awarding 30 million naira against the federal government for the torture of Agba Jalingo. So 30 million naira as compensation for somebody who was arrested and then chained to a deep freezer for about 34 days without being charged to court, being brutalized, being dehumanized. Are there cases? I mean, for me, that kind of case really gets a reaction from me and me wanting to see justice be done, right? So that's why I say it's kind of personal. Are there any cases like that, of that nature, that, of what nature, that you really think we need to just keep on and make sure that this thing goes to the
Lots
very
of them,
end?
really.
And
Lots
by
of
the
them.
way, was the ECOWAS court who awarded this 30 million naira to Cross River State government to pay to Agbajalingo?
Yes, it was awarded. It should be paid to Agba Jalingo, but again, the government is yet to obey those judgments. And you recall, it's not for lack of knowledge about this. So we written to Attorney General, I think it was in 2019, about some of the judgments that are yet to be obeyed. The judgment we got on pension laws then. So we wrote a letter to the Attorney General's office, and we got a response saying that the Attorney General would like a list of those individuals. And I'm like, list of those who used to be deputy governors and governors who are now ministers. Like, after ABC in primary one, I'm sure by primary three, every average student knows those guys. But again, we obliged, we wrote nothing after that. So it's not for lack of knowledge, because like I told you, the lawyers end up in court, so the lawyers are part of that process up till judgment. It is just this lack of political will, which is just one word: impunity.
So when we look at lack of political will, you know how you have somebody and you say, tell your mother.
So who is the mother
I
in this
mean,
case?
Nigeria is party to a number of conventions, charters, whatever. We've signed a number of international.
And we do sign a lot of them.
Yeah, we signed a lot that we're supposed to stick to, right? At what point do you say, okay, well, we kept it within the boundaries, it's not working within the boundaries, let's take it higher?
Let's escalate. And we do that a lot too, which is
Okay.
why we wrote a petition to the International Criminal Court about the insecurity in the north and the lack of access to education that we've seen, which again is going to contribute to the growing number of out-of-school children, which affects us everywhere. You would understand. You can connect the dots with the insecurity in Lagos, the recent events, insecurity in the north, and then you can tie it to lack of education, and then you can tie it to lack of funds to fund education. We have more than,
Directly or indirectly, we're
yes,
all affected.
13 million children, out of school children in Nigeria, and growing. When you pause and reflect on what that means, it means if 3 million of them cross state border lines and end up in Lagos, do you know what that means? And then the numbers are growing with the growing insecurity and the shutdown of schools. And we wrote to the
Starting to
ICC.
get a fair idea of what that means.
Yes. And so, which is why we need to understand this advocacy it's not about politics, it's not about tribe. It is in the interest of good governance. So, Shokwe, again, to speak to those personal feelings, it brings a form of angst when you see people that don't understand what this work entails and think it's just, and then people pedestrian comments like it's politics, it's funding. Like, these people don't understand. This is about a society that works for everyone, where you don't have to wind up your windows when you're passing some specific areas and praying that the traffic should move. It means you have roads that actually work. It means you have something in the semblance of 911 that you can dial and somebody responds actually. It means you can. I hope you know, I've had people complain now that to go to government hospitals, they have to get people's numbers, some doctors or high up that they have to know. And really, it's gotten that worse, which is why we need to continue this advocacy, build that critical mass to ensure that the right thing is done. I'm sure it's not going to be one day, but it's going to take time, but we need to step
All
up.
right, we'll wrap up the conversation in a moment. You can send in your messages to us on WhatsApp 0809 4440981.
Now, the question I'm going to leave us on as we go into the break for you to think about and then get back to us is this. So you talked about people saying that, you're feeling a certain way when people say, "Oh, it's political," and that you guys are just being the opposition. Now, that brings into mind what exactly the opposition party should be doing in these cases as well. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, in Nigeria and in other countries, in fact, in countries, in government, it's supposed to be about checks and balances and about tension and opposing forces, making sure that you stay on the straight and narrow, right? So that's the question. We'll come back with the answer. I see you want to say it after the break.
Oh God, really? That's when I get. So I've had someone ask me, "How do I?" Like, so she see us in the office actually, very cool, because we decided that, you know what, you will just die
Can't come and
if
kill
you
ourselves.
so you just find a way to just.
You need to be at peace with your situation while still being able to.
So and I will
move
say
forward.
this: we've had lawyers from the government approach our lawyers in court to say, "Guy,
Really?
yeah," but lawyers
But-
can naturally do that
Yes,
because
yes.
it's not
But
personal.
you know
Yeah.
the truth.
But they take the effort to come to say,
See, those judges stall these cases deliberately most times because you're instituting it against the federal government.
maybe, but that is hard to prove, particularly when you see that even other cases get slowed down. But the balancing, what balances that, which supports your position, is when you see political cases move so fast, you're like, can you imagine?
So that's the thing, meaning you in this same suit, president is the minister of justice is on this same suit, and me,
So
the
it's not
small
okay
lawyer,
to give up on
a
Nigeria.
small lawyer, and not asking me to.
Yeah, but we need to continue. We
We
can't.
don't have a
Roe
lot of
versus
people
Wade.
who
Somebody
have-
fought
so
for it.
if-
That's why.
for instance, if a lawyer
Although,
decides to have the balls
They
to
want to
say,
say-
I don't know. what
has
to
the
tell
balls
you.
to say, "Oh, Sarah, people are right. Judgment this against federal government." You know what might happen to that lawyer now?
No.
He's under the
When,
civil
no,
service
when he
now,
says
is he
that,
not?
it's not in the open. No.
No,
It's
I
not in
mean
the open.
judgment. If they give a judgment to you people against the federal government, which of course we know that is clear, it's supposed to be that way,
Yeah.
quickly. But we know that, even some of these lawyers, they have bosses,
Yes.
chains up, and it will not be that easy. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so again, it just shows that for me, the reason why I term it a success project-wise is that it means this individual understands. He understands, even if he appears
We live in
helpless,
Nigeria now,
but
we
he
see these
understands. But there are people you actually meet that really believe in the BS they are saying when they tell you it's political. Really, he believes it.
I feel sad about this message. As you sent us a message saying, "Listen to the show over the last few minutes. I feel really, really sad. I think it's okay to give up on Nigeria at this point." I'll read it out. Well, after you come back with your response on that.
And funny enough, I'm not any prophet of optimism.
Nope, wrong one. Studio. Well, here we are in the final few minutes of Lagos Talks and of Smooth Breakfast in general. I can't believe it's come to this time already. We've been talking about, and we're still talking about good governance, accountability, transparency, human rights. In fact, it runs the gamut because we have the Deputy Director of SERAP, Kolawole Oluwadare, in the studio with us. And Kolawole is, good because we've been throwing a lot at you, but you've been, holding it up. You know what to do. Anyway, and we've been taking your messages, and we're still taking your messages on 0809 440 981. And we'll probably have time for one more call if you want to try 014489 Now, caller, before the break, I had asked you about people saying, "Oh, this is political," and then also about the opposition party. Yeah, go ahead, share your thoughts.
And really,
with us.
you had asked if where is the opposition? I don't know. Probably because it's windy, it's blown the umbrella away. But I don't think the broom is of any effect too. So really, but this is beyond politics. It's just good governance. And like I've said, people need to understand that. And I think the message gets a bit distorted that people think SERAP is either the opposition, is playing the opposition, or should be the opposition. And the answer is a no. No, we are not. We are none of these things. We are not a political party. We are not partisan. But since we started out in 2004, consistently we've tried to hold government to account and to educate the citizens and to advocate for human rights. And so people should play their part in being more involved. When you see the level of involvement towards 2023 election-wise, I'm talking on the part of the voters now, you would wonder where they are in between the 4 years between every election cycle. If we sustain this kind of interest in getting our voters card and voting, and the campaigns towards holding the government to account in the next 4 years, we would begin to see that change, because they would understand that the people really have a point and they're willing to stand together for what is right. But frankly, most times after the election, we get divided again along, if it's not ethnic, it's tribal or religious lines, and then we are never be able to or have that collective front. And collective doesn't mean 100% really to hold government to account.
All right. Now, final question is, well, actually, maybe not the final question. Azu sent in a message on WhatsApp saying, listening to the show over the last few minutes, I just feel really, really sad. I think it's okay to give up on Nigeria at this point. What would you say to that?
No, really, I feel really bad, because I do not believe that is the intention we want to convey of what we set out to do. And I'm not sure we're putting out those vibes. So I'm sure maybe the individual just thought of everything and just put it.
Because when you think about it as a whole, you can feel rather overwhelmed.
Yes. Which is like you
So what can Nigerians now do to support the cause that you're doing, to just have all hands on deck and not be like this person who says, I'm tired like this, I don't even want to do again?
I just believe he or she is being expressive, really, and I
love
saw some
it. I love
Nigerians
that
feel
he's
this way
able
too,
to,
and
yeah.
it's a normal human reaction. And really, like they do say, validate those emotions and those feelings, but you need to ask yourself, how does this help me? How does it help us?
It's
So
also
we need to
a
continue.
reaction that tends to be born out of a feeling or a sense of powerlessness. So how do we
No,
now
it's
put
not.
the power
It shouldn't be. So when you feel that, we understand that you have power. Number one, the law says you have power, and it may not look like that in reality, given the actions of government. But you need to understand that even the actions of government, the knee-jerk reactions they do, if you look at it carefully, they are telling you have power, which is why they do this tokenism to make you guys at peace, feel at peace, and why they do the things they need to do. So you need to understand you have power, and then you begin to take steps. So, for instance, we're having a conversation. People calling, they send SMSs. You think government is not listening? They do listen.
listen,
Now,
You think
Paula,
it does not matter? It matters.
for those that are listening, here's the thing. Going back to power, knowledge is power. So go ahead. How can citizens make their wants, their voices heard, and their wants manifested? How do
can they use
we
their power?
as citizens manifest the power that we have?
So I think it goes back to knowledge, because if you don't know, then whatever advocacy or whatever civic engagement you try to do as a citizen, you're going to go about it wrongly. So knowledge means understanding the context of what good governance is and the role you're meant to play as a citizen. So when you write articles, you write letters, you do this kind of thing we're doing, you are coming from an objective point of view of this is what the law says, not because it's from this place or he or she said that. And that is what we've seen. So it's not, I don't think it's from a lack of that ability to do. It is from the kind of knowledge people have about what governance is and what they should do is really skewed, which is why, again, we're easily divisible.
We need to
along
go
ethnic and
because of
political
our
lines.
time. But then you see, so what we say, the people have the power, aside the votes, because of course you use your vote, that's your power during the next election. Again, we always talk about knowing your House of Reps members, knowing your House of Assembly members, even to the councillors. In fact, we live in Lagos. There are local councils in Lagos. Many of us don't even know the representatives at the local level where it needs to begin. We're even talking about the Okada ban in Lagos, for instance. If you knew these councillors, you press home your demands from there. The House of Assembly members, you talk to them, the House of Reps, the Senate, but most times these people are hardly accessible.
Well, you can write letters. Send emails. Yes, you can.
Kolawole Oluwadare, thank you very much for being a part of the show this morning. We really, really, really love the insights you've given on some of the cases already in courts, issues of accountability, judicial system, corruption, human rights. Thank you very much.
And what civil society organizations can do. And by the way, SERAP is not the only CSO, right? Even when off air, but on YouTube, we're talking about budgets. Enough is enough, and the
Action
list.
Aid Nigeria.
Yeah, the list goes on. So it's not just when we look at CSOs, it's not just SERAP. So that also should promote a feeling of hope, hopefully, in that there are these
23.
organizations that are, trying to fight for my rights, trying to fight for your rights, trying to fight for our rights. So, on that message of hope, we end the show. Kola, it's been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shokwe. Thank you, Purple.
And by the way, Kola is the deputy director at SERAP.
Yeah, you make that director sound like it's a government big deal.
And coming up, it is going to be strictly solo from 10 o'clock. You can catch Khadija on the Casbah, and Zippy is going to be on your smooth drive from 4 p.m. Stick with us right here. It is the station that loves music and loves life.
My name is. Sorry. There's a message here for you, Kola. It says, it's not the